If your creative push has helped you, you can help the show by shopping on Amazon.com. All you have to do is head to yourcreativepush.com/Amazon. That will take you right there, and you can shop how you normally would. A small percentage of your purchases will go directly to helping cover the costs of creating, hosting, and maintaining your creative push. And especially with the holidays coming up, you can make a big difference just by buying the things you were going to anyway. Again, that's yourcreativepush.com/Amazon, and thank you for thinking of the show and for helping out. Your Creative Push, episode 180.
If people are able to tell instantly why you took that photo and what you're trying to show, I think you've done good.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Alex Strohl. Alex is a Madrid-born French adventure photographer whose work is characterized by his extraordinary existence. Instead of creating contrived scenes, he creates authentic moments and captures them as they unfold before him, continually blurring the lines between work and life. His photography has been featured in prestigious publications such as Forbes, Vanity Fair, and Gentleman's Journal, and his client list includes dozens of household names. He is based in Whitefish, Montana, but spends the vast majority of his time on the road with his partner, Andrea Dabene, as they often journey to the most remote reaches of the world. And Alex, thank you so much for coming on the show. I was wondering if we could start out by you giving us kind of a brief creative bio, kind of how you got to the point you are today as a photographer.
Yes. Well, hey, young man, thanks for having me.
Of course.
It's always interesting to get a chance to, have a conversation and maybe inspire others. I've been doing photography since 2008. Andrea and I, my wife and I, have been sort of nomads for the past 4 years. Mm-hmm. We didn't have a permanent address until last year. It's been a wild ride. Our policy for whenever we moved into a new place for a few months would be to don't buy anything you can't move in a car. So we always need to be able to be flexible and move everything in just one car. So that sort of keeps you lean and you don't stock up too much stuff you don't need. But just getting back to the photography, it all started in my first year of graphic design school in France. There was some photography classes and on the graphic design side, we were just sort of encouraged to use photography for our project. So I just bought a little camera and ended up not really using it for any of the projects, but I would go skiing, just take photos of my friends riding and, in the free riding or in the park. That's sort of how it always started, a mix of being outside and doing stuff outside.
So it was like kind of self-taught, mostly just experimentation? I'd
like to say yes, but there is a lot of, that was the beginning. So yes. And then I've sort of decided that France wasn't enough. Wasn't big enough, I guess. Mm-hmm. And everything felt a bit small. So I moved to Quebec City in Canada and, everything was a lot bigger in Canada. And I continued graphic design there at a university and I was blown away by the sort of educational system in Canada and the US. We had access to a dark room, to a lab that would rent us full format cameras and film and lights and tripods. So it was just sort of like being in a candy store. Those 3 years spent in Quebec at the university, it was graphic design, but you could sort of custom make your own schedule. And that was I was blown away by that because in Europe, it's a bit more traditional where you have 5 days a week and they're full of a schedule that doesn't change and you don't get a saying in it. It's like Monday morning, you have advertising class, and then after you got this. In Quebec, you're able to sort of build your schedule to give yourself free days to go outside and also to pick your classes. So I had graphic design, I had sort of studio photography and editing. So there was a lot of, so to answer your question, there was a lot of actually knowledge learned from university. I know that university has a bad rap, but to me, it served me. I don't think I finished my degree, because we moved to British Columbia, but everything that I did was mostly helpful.
So then when you're choosing places to go, to see all these places, do you have a shot in mind, or are you just kind of going to see it with your own eyes, or are you kind of anticipating what you're going to see through the lens?
I think it differs. It really depends on the mandate. Sometimes we're just going somewhere just for fun, just to see it. And obviously it's always fun, but sometimes it's really almost a holiday. You're just going and don't have anything planned and sort of stuff unfolds and you end up capturing things more passively. And sometimes if you have a mandate or you're just on an assignment, then yes, you need to conceptualize images sort of in your mind and put them on paper and gather all the stuff you need and who you need. So I think it's twofold. Sometimes it's a bit refreshing to let stuff happen, but yeah, other times you got to sort of build it. It's a whole production.
And then what's it like with Andrea? Like, is there, do you ever have like kind of creative differences, or do you ever have like disagreements as far as like what you want to see essentially and what you want to shoot?
Yes. That's a good question. Yes, absolutely. But that's what's fun, right?
Right.
You know, in an enterprise, if two sides agree all the time, one of them becomes pointless. So, in a way, I like this sort of resistance there is with Andrea, because she doesn't want to go to cold places all the time. I do want to go to cold places. She wants to see warm places. I used to not want to, now sort of growing on me, and also Andrea shoots different things. She's more, detail oriented, and I think she's in her own thing and I'm in my own thing. She's more detail oriented and also more feminine.
Right. But that's important to have that kind of a difference too. Like you said, like if you're not only if you're agreeing on everything, but also just having different styles and different ways of looking at things too, I think can help, I'm sure help each other to grow in that way. Yes. Yeah.
When I met Andrea in Quebec, it was 6 years ago, actually. She wasn't into photography at all. She was studying at PR. And,
wow.
And after hearing me talk about it and me taking her to random places, completely random, just because I wanted to see what it was and take some photos, document it, she ended up picking up a camera and learning slowly. And at that point, I think we were both shooting the same things. And then a few years ago, she was realizing that she wasn't herself on that front. So she changed it up and sort of told her own story.
And I think an important lesson can be learned there too. It's if you're trying something out creatively and it's not quite your cup of tea, or you just kind of want to venture in a different way, it's okay to do that, to do something that not everybody around you is doing, and to do something completely different, as long as like it's kind of, I always say this, but what makes your heart sing,
Yeah, no, I like that expression a lot. Yeah, I think we all have a unique story, so no matter what you do, it's going to be different in a way. But if you spend time sort of making sense in what makes you different, working on that only, then I think that's how you take it to the next level.
What would you say makes you different?
Well, it's always a work in progress.
Right.
But so far, I think that probably my upbringing, the fact that I got moved around by my parents a lot. I was in Spain for 15 years, and when I was in Spain, I was the Frenchman because my parents were French. And when I moved to France, I was the Spaniard because I sort of came from Spain.
Right.
And when I got to the US, I was the Frenchman again. And in Canada, I was the Frenchman. So it's always, I've never felt like I'm belonging anywhere. So I think that's what builds your core, is this sense of being neutral in a place and not feeling like you own it or you're from there. And that helped me sort of develop maybe a more first neutral look, then I could build on my vision on it.
I love that. Yeah. And also like taking things from everywhere you've been, just being able to pick the best from each location, like the best parts of what makes you a person.
Yes. I mean, I think that just to get it more in detail, when we get somewhere, I think no matter who you are, the first instinct is to compare it to somewhere else. And I think that's where the first mistake is to try to compare things, but that's how the human mind is. So I think the more you go places, the more you'll want to compare them. So it's important to be aware of that and at least I try not to do that.
Absolutely, yeah. You mentioned some of the resistance with Andrea. Do you have any other resistances, like when it comes to actually going out and shooting, or actually, everything else that comes with being a professional photographer?
Yes, there's been some resistance. I think that I tend to have more of a selective memory and I forget about the hard times. And only focus on what sort of helps me grow. And the hard times obviously do, but I tend to forget them. So I don't have precise moments of when it was super hard, but there's certainly been some drawbacks. I mean, whatever I felt like something was slowing me down, I would just make sure I could avoid it or erase that thing or feeling, just so I could design sort of my own way.
Yeah, it's like having that selective memory, I think is sometimes very valuable to not be weighted down by like the bad things that have happened to you, or especially the bad things that might happen to you in the future, you know, to not be weighted down by all of those things and just to kind of keep moving forward with a positive mindset in mind. Yes,
I completely agree. I think it's important to be in the present and not live in the past or in the future. I mean, it's obviously not easy, but keeping that in mind every day sort of helps. I think that coming from Europe, and especially France, people tend to be generally a bit negative. That's sort of the trend, is to focus on what didn't work and how bad whatever you're living is. But it was a steep learning curve when you get to the US and you realize that few people actually think that way in the US. Yeah, it was a game changer. So I had to do sort of double the amount of work to get to that sort of more like a standard US point where you sort of focus on the positive.
Or try to, at least.
Yeah. I mean, try to. There's a lot of awful things in the world, and that doesn't mean they're not real and you shouldn't reflect on them. But on a daily basis, I try to, just focus on what works. Sort of challenge by trying things, and there's always some drawbacks.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. I think a really good point is living in the present. It's especially with what you're doing, like being in these amazing places. And I think people can gain a lot from that. Even if you're just sitting at home alone with your work, like that's a pretty nice place to be and a pretty lucky place to be. And it's trying to enjoy that time rather than thinking about, oh God, like what are my fans going to think about this? What's my family going to think about what I'm doing? Like, will this be a success? It's just like, no, just like be in the present, be in that present moment, that kind of unique and lovely situation that you can find yourself in when you're being able to be creative.
Yes. I think it's hard, I think, for any creative to sit in silence in front of your own work. It's pretty hard for me to sort of look at my photos for more than like half an hour.
Right.
I get really, I don't know. Yeah, you sort of get a bit judgmental on your own thing, and, I tend to want to move forward all the time, but it's important to not float between place to place. And I used to just sort of levitate between this place and never really got anywhere like that. I would go, but I wouldn't remember it. So, since we moved to the US, like since 2 years ago, I've, just pick an area that's like 50 miles of radius and see what's there. I think that becomes more valuable to me than hitting items, that everybody goes to.
Right. No, that makes sense. You said that you can't spend more than like 30 minutes in front of your work. Do you often have to push through that though? Like if you have to, like, assignment, and if so, like how do you get through that then?
Yes. So on some shoots, you have somebody helping you do the editing and workflow, a digitech, they call that. Digital technician. It's a fancy word. But I think it's helpful to make the, especially when there's clients around and, everybody wants to look at the photos time and time again, and they want you to shoot more and more photos. So it's good to have help on that front, but sometimes you need to push a lot and, look at some of the stuff for hours thinking about something else.
And then when you do have to like push through that, do you have any like tips for people who are maybe like at that point where they either have a deadline coming up or a self-imposed deadline, or they just want to get through this like project that maybe it's been taking up all their time and they're just like, they can't even see straight because they've been looking at it for too long. Do you have any advice then for like how to kind of get through that type of thing?
Well, it's still a work in progress for me, deadlines. I think it'll always be a work in progress for everybody. I think no matter how much you do them, it's still that big thing in your life that you have to finish. So,
right.
What I found works the best for me, and I think for many people, is having a schedule and a routine and a flow from X time, X day, you sort of do it. No matter if you feel about it or not. It's like breathing pretty much, I find that if I allocate a certain amount of time for any task, I get it done in that amount of time. But if I just get into the studio and start tinkering around and, I'm like, I have all day to do this, then it usually doesn't get done.
That's one of the things I struggle with the most, and I talk about on the show, Parkinsons Law, where like exactly like you said, yep. Whatever the allotted time you have for it, you'll take that full amount of time.
Oh yeah.
And so I always find myself, the day before editing the show, putting it up, or whatever it happens to be. Do you struggle from this? Like, would you be a good advice giver for that? Like on how to like give yourself earlier self-imposed deadlines so you can kind of get ahead of the curve?
I don't know if I'm a good advice giver on that, but I'll just tell you how I do it. And I just set up, I literally would go to every task I need to, because every project, no matter how small it is, it still has a few different tasks. For you, it's upload the show, but then to upload the show, you need to master it, and to master it, you need to do this. So each little branch of things that need to be done related to that task, I set up an allotted amount of time. So 10 minutes for this, 15 for this, 5 for this, and I set up timers on my phone. And it's a bit clunky, but whenever that timer is ringing, then you know that you need to move on to the next task.
Right.
So I just break the task in small slices that are easier to achieve, instead of looking at it as a big thing. And, sometimes there's something you need to do in 3 months and it's big. I don't know, deliver these images or create this new website. So I'll just try to start with the easiest thing I can do. I'm sitting there, I'm like, what is the easiest thing I can do to get started? Find a title for whatever I need to do, and that's already a start, right? Then the next day it's easier to continue it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even for those like micro tasks, like just like the first few minutes of it is always tough, but when you can kind of get in the flow, it gets a lot easier.
Yes. Yeah. When you get in the flow, that's the right thing. And it's not always easy when you're traveling to have this flow, right? When you're on the road, I think productivity just gets killed. Right.
For you, I would assume you just want to always be just shooting when you're on the road, right? Like there's probably no editing that happens, or?
No, but very little.
Very little.
Even though whatever I post on the internet, I try to have it fresh from the day. It's almost like a fish. It's today's catch, and I try to just keep it fresh, and it pushes me to be more, I don't know, tell a more real-time story. And some people like to leave off an archive and just work on the archive, and if I would do that, then it just gets me, I think deep inside I'm pretty lazy, so I need to keep boundaries to keep me doing things.
Right. And then it can't be as exciting too whenever you're like, editing pictures that you took 6 months before, you're not mentally there, you know what I mean? Or you get just nostalgic and you're too sad to do it because you just want to be there, I would imagine.
Well, sometimes it's good to have a sort of let them cure on the hard drive, let them mature. And when you look at them, you probably do, if I look at a set of photos that I shot yesterday, I would probably do a certain amount of selects and move forward with that. But if I look at them in 6 months, I would probably be more critical and actually select different images depending on whatever I've learned in the 6 months. So
right, you can look at it with a more mature eye.
Yes. Sometimes I look back at a catalog from 2010 and I'm like, oh, I didn't see this photo. Now I like it. I think it's healthy to practice both things, sort of do real-time editing and also go back to the images in a year or two.
I got you. Do you find yourself shooting with your iPhone, or I don't know what kind of phone you have, but just with your phone, just like snapping pictures to like post them up, or like, are you always trying to have your like kind of Alex Strohl brand of, just really highly polished, really gorgeous images?
No, I rarely shoot with my phone. I mostly shoot with, just my Canon 5D, just because I like the quality better. If I'm going to shoot a photo, I might as well make it the better quality.
The best it can be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if a photo is not sharp, I'll still use it, because if the mood is right, I don't care if it's sharp or not.
I got you. It just has to say what you want it to say.
Yeah, even if it's underexposed because it was too dark to shoot it. If I think if the life is there, then, if the reason why you wanted to take that photo can shine through the photo, I think it doesn't matter how it is. If it's blurry or dark or bright. Yeah, sounds a bit cliche, but I think it's really the bottom line is just focus on the story.
No, absolutely. That's what connects with people the most, rather than, high resolution or just well polished stories. It's all about the heart of it.
Yes.
I love talking about the heart.
Now, I would say that I enjoy it when you polish something and it looks like it hasn't been polished. I think that's the sort of the jam. Doesn't happen all the time, but you spend a lot of time onto something, into writing a good caption, a good story, and people sort of sweep through it fast, and it feels like it was very candid from that moment. I strive for that.
Well, speaking of stories, I was wondering, did you have like a bad story, like a worst moment, specifically having to do with kind of your creative journey?
Probably the hardest days were when we moved to Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. I was working on a newspaper there, had a steady job, and I was just making films for the newspaper. filming, editing, and just daily news, right? So that wasn't super inspiring, but it was still interesting to be in the field. And I got to Vancouver and didn't really have anywhere to start. Wasn't established in the area, and I just ended up working at a furniture store.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, nothing bad with that. It was a good way to, whatever I do, I try to learn something out of it. The furniture store was a good way to increase English skills.
Right, so you found a way to make the best out of it.
Yeah, and there was always friends who'd be like, bro, just quit that job and just go for it. And I knew I had to do it. I was just sort of wrapping up this gig, I guess. It's good when people share that that these feelings with you. I like that. I try to do that with people I meet too. Sort of I love convincing people to quit their jobs.
Okay, well, I'll give you the opportunity to do that now. Because I think a lot of people that are listening, and myself included, it's tough when you and I were talking about that a little bit before the show too, just about, that steady stream of income, especially when you have other people that are kind of relying on you. And it's just kind of a scary thing to be like, all right, let's go for it. But do you have any advice for people that are in that kind of limbo situation?
Well, instead of just sharing, some tips, I'm going to share a story with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's a story of Isaac Johnston, who now works for our studio full time, and he was working as a general manager of a vacation rental company in Montana when we met him last year. So 9 to 5, was doing very good at what he was doing. And
felt like he needed more adventure in his life. So after spending some time with us and friends who were doing, freelance lifestyles, he decided, let it go, and just, I let him use one of my older cameras, and, he was shooting many, many photos every day. And he was, he wasn't picky about him. Well, he was very picky actually, but he was just trying to do volume to learn, and he was, I think he was good at focusing, and he still is on the story he was telling, and this voice that came from the inside, his voice that was unique. And now flash forward, a year's come through, and we hire him on a pretty much monthly basis, and he's also been shooting photos full time. So now he's got the schedule he wants pretty much, because he doesn't have a schedule with us. He just has tasks and does them when he wants, but he's also, shooting images for clients, and that, in a year, right? From the idea of doing it to doing it to execution, it's taken a year. And I think that's because he focused on the story, and he wasn't proud of any of his photos. He was just looking at them and like, yeah, this is what I did. I don't know if I like it or not. I'm just going to continue and, ask for feedback to everybody I know. And I think that worked for him and could work for many. So I think, the strength is focusing on that story that's inside you, and listening to that voice, that comes from you, and practicing and keeping at it. That's also the key, I think. It's just pushing through every day.
Right.
Even though, your family or, sort of your in-laws are looking at you funny.
Right.
Because Isaac Johnston, 32 years old, is married and has 2 kids. So he sort of took this leap of faith, and it worked,
Yeah.
Time will tell how it will go in the future, but he did it. So.
Yeah, and he won't have any regrets either.
No, that's exactly that. You always regret what you don't do.
Yeah, I think you touched on a couple of really important points. Number one is telling your own unique story. Of course, learning from the people around you, the people that inspire you, but making sure that, like we were talking about before, that you just maintain, what is inside of you, regardless of like what other people think. And then if you do kind of take a leap, or even like just a very large step in that right direction, it is putting in that time, and putting in, the time that you've kind of maybe been behind other people, just to get that self-education for yourself, and to get all the kind of bad work out of you, so that you can kind of progress as fast as you can.
Oh yeah, volume, and I think not having any pride, any sense of ego on whatever you do, and asking for advice, because whoever you ask is happy to give you advice, actually. That's the misconception, right? I think people love to give advice, and people don't love to ask for advice. So that's what the gap is, I think. So if you ask for advice, I don't know, anybody you meet has something to teach you. So if you approach it that way, I think you'll just get ahead, I guess.
Absolutely. You can become a Renaissance man or Renaissance woman. Just like, yeah, like you said, how you're a French to the Spaniards and the Spaniard to the French. And
exactly.
it's like that. It's like taking a piece of, you know, everybody that you kind of encounter and just like taking all of that kind of advice and helping to meld the person that's already inside of you, like, and have that person kind of come out.
Yes. And one last note on the asking for advice, you know, obviously nobody likes a brain picker that comes back every day to ask for stuff. So what Isaac did right, and I think what people should do, is know what their knowledge is. So Isaac was born and raised in Montana, so he knew the woods very well. And, you know, he knew the mountains, he just knew a lot of places and the history of the places. So that was his strength. So all these people he you know, including us, he would take us to some of his favorite places that we didn't know about because it was just his spot, and he found it, you know, on a bike ride years ago, for example, and sort of giving us all the value he could was making us give him all the value we could.
Right. It's like a bartering system.
Yeah, but, you know, there was never an agreement,
sure,
or a handshake. It was, you know, like, hey, you guys want to go here this weekend? Yeah, sure, we'll go there. And, you know, whenever he was asking for advice, well, obviously, you know, you're going to give him all you can because he gave you all he could.
And it's valuing the information and the knowledge that you have too. And just because you're what might seem like light years behind people that you're asking for advice, like, it doesn't mean that what you have to offer isn't valuable and what your life experience isn't valuable.
Oh yeah, obviously. That's why so it's about a confidence, you know, it's a confidence thing. Yeah. Yes, I know about this and I'm going to offer it to this person. See what happens.
Absolutely. Well, how about a best moment? Do you have a best creative moment?
Yes. I think there's a few sort of breaks in life. You know, there's not just one big one, but there's a few breaks. And for me, it was this image of Andrea. I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know if it is anywhere anymore. But I'd seen all these snowboard movies. It was in 2012, I think. They were rigging cameras in trees, so the cameras would be looking down at the skiers from the sky through the trees, and that would give some pretty cool shots of, you know, perspective, literally looking down. And I thought that was, you know, there was no drones back then, and to get that view, you needed a heli or to be creative, or, you know, very crafty and make zip lines with cameras on them. And after seeing, you know, all these viewpoints in snowboard and ski movies, I thought I'd give it a try, and we're in the south of France with Andrea at my parents' swimming pool. And I had this sort of vision, you know, woke up with this idea this morning. It's like, oh, I want to try to take a view of the pool where it's from the air, and we can only see water from the top. And Andrea, I'd like to sort of fall down in the pool like you were dropping from the sky. Yeah, so there's a few limitations, right? Because it hurts your back if you drop like that in the pool. You know, anyways, so we just went on and found this stair system that we set up in the pool, and you know, I went on and found this framing, and it was sunny, so the water was like really shiny and blue. And Andrea dropped a few times, and you know, I was quite happy with the image because there was a big splash, and she was looking very serene at the camera. At the same time, she was sort of breaking water with her back, so it took a few tries. But anyways, you know, like a year ago after that, when I was working, I put it on some 500px. It's a photography website, a bit like some sort of a new Flickr. And anyways, I just added a bunch of keywords back that summer, and I don't know why. And a year after that, get an email from some agency in New York who wants to buy the image for some sort of campaign. So I thought it was a scam first. Of course. And then, you know, they gave me a call, like, hey, Alex, we need that for tomorrow. I'm like, what? Okay. So anyways, they offered me pretty much like a yearly salary just to buy my image.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was still a student working half-time at a newspaper, and obviously I agreed to the sale. I didn't think it was real until I saw the money on my bank account. But then, you know, we're sitting on this sort of lump of cash. Like, how do we best use this? You know, there's a lot of money. You can live for years on that money for us.
Wow, that's awesome.
So, yeah. So we decided to take trips. So first thing was to go to Iceland, you know, in 2011, and go to Patagonia and Chile. Andrea has a lot of family in Chile. So anyways, we spent most of that cash and going places and staying a while, just to experience it with the locals. And I think that helped create some sort of an international flair on this photography portfolio and the social media accounts, and ended up, being an important break. There was a bit of luck involved, but there was also making that image and putting these random keywords that made sure that they found the image somehow. Keywords can be useful.
And going back, when you made the image, it was for fun, right? Like, it wasn't
Oh, yeah. It's like a summer project, it's August, it's very hot. What are you going to do today?
And I think that's one of the funnest parts of the story, is that, what you never know what you create out of your heart. Like, the things that, like, you want to make for fun, just for the act of being creative, just for the act of doing it, and trying to see if you can live up to this challenge of something that you've seen before. You never know what that will lead to. Like, you just have no idea. So just keep making stuff, just keep making, the most challenging things that come to your head,
Yes. It's always perseverance, and you always collect whatever you sort of, do. It ends up paying back.
I'm so glad that could springboard you into the kind of the life and the career that you've created for yourself, man. That's so cool.
Oh yeah. Thanks, mate. My dad was super proud that his swimming pool was in Times Square hanging. For real, he was the proudest, I think, of everybody. He's like, my pool is in Times Square. He would say that to everybody.
Not of his son.
Yeah, he was proud of his pool, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
It was a wild ride.
Well, congratulations to him then.
Yes, every day.
Oh man! Before we get to the final push,
yes,
I was wondering, do you have anything that like inspires you, like a greatest inspiration, or a YouTube clip, or a book, or really anything that kind of brings you inspiration?
There is something that brings me guidance, and that's from Lao Tzu or Lao Tse. I'm not exactly sure, but it's writer, philosopher, writer. A few centuries ago, and I think it's China. He has this book called Lao Tse. He talks about life values, and the clip sort of goes along the way of to live simply, to do, when it comes to work, do something you love, and when it comes to family, be fully present, and when it comes to work, don't try to control. So. It's it's not the most inspirational quote, but for me, it just gives me a sort of references for any situation. The Lao Tse also encompasses the idea of letting things happen. It's always too tempting to try to steer things when you're taking photos, to try to steer things some sort of direction when you're shooting models or friends, to try to control it. But if you're able to quiet yourself inside and let people be natural and and just do things, I think that will give you strength to whatever you're doing, if you're shooting photos or film.
Absolutely, I agree, and that's where you find the happy surprises too. That's where you find the things that you weren't looking for that really catch your eye. Yes, because it's all too easy to start controlling everything, and then you're manufacturing a product, and obviously a lot of people are very good at that. I just don't think I'm one of them. Oh, that's beautiful, man. We'll have that linked up then in the show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Alex Strohl. Alex, it's time for the final push. Yes. This is where I ask you to kind of reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today, and just give them your best words of advice and really push them to pursue their creative passions. Well, I think it echoes back to the story of Isaac, really, as a point of reference. I think that for whatever you're trying to achieve, whatever craft you're trying to achieve, I think for me, it's important to focus on the story you're going to tell, whatever it is, through a sculpture or a painting or a photo or a film. Instead of focusing on technicalities, just focus on the story and just get that right. And I think people will come. I think it has to come from the inside and your inside, because that's what makes it special. So when people ask me, oh, what's your best tip, to start making photos and what to take photos of, I think it's not like it's a tutorial, there's not 3 steps to taking photos. I think it's more about reflect what interests you, whatever it is. If you like, I don't know, cookies, great. Well, focus on that and think about why you like cookies. Or if you like to go outside, focus on why do you like to go outside and what's special about it to you. I don't know. I think that's the bottom line of every start. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's finding that unique aspect of your life, your existence, and showing people, or finding a way to show people. And I think that does take time to figure out how to effectively show that, but to show people why that is important to you, or why that particular cookie is interesting to you, you know. And now I'm hungry.
Sorry, I said the keyword. But yeah, I think that if people are able to tell instantly why you took that photo and what you're trying to show, because I try to think my images sometimes for a viewer, what emotion, what's my message, you know. And if people are able to tell it in, you know, in a snap of a second, then I think you've done good. So I think the most common thing when you look at someone's, you know, first images is that you're not sure what you're looking at. You know, there's a lot of things, and I think we all start that way, and it takes a while to sort of narrow down your vision to why did I take this image, or why did I make this film? You know, what am I trying to really show?
For sure. And like you said, with Isaac, it's putting in a lot of work, putting in the volume, and also being able to see what other people are reacting to with your images or whatever it is that you're creating. And that's why it's really important to share as well, just to see other people's reactions and gauge whether or not you were effective in telling your story. I think it's really important.
I mean, yeah, on that, I think there's two schools as well, right? You can also create images for yourself. Like a lot of photographers do that. And I think that's equally good, you know. I think it's even harder to create images for yourself because, you know, when people recognize that, I think it has sort of a higher level, I think. So it's good to think about feedback and, you know, what people are going to think, but the more you go, I think the more you'll be shooting for yourself and aiming for that, and that's what will create your signature. Bottom line, I would say, you know, I think that there's a book called Ego is the Enemy from Ryan Holiday, and I think that getting ego out of the way is very important.
Yeah, and that takes time and practice too, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, we all love talking about ourselves. So it's quite powerful to just sit down with someone and just listen to them like you just did, you know. So I admire that, and I love to do that, you know, every day. Every people I encounter, it's more like an interview. I just like to listen to what they have to say. Well, thank you for sharing with us what you have to say. We really appreciate it.
Thanks,
we appreciate the inspiration and you telling us your story, man.
Thanks.
And you can find Alex on his website, which is alexstrohl.com, ALEXSTROHL.com. And on Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, pretty much everything, he is Alex Strohl. And I would highly recommend checking him out on Instagram at the very least, because he has some amazing work. So beautiful and so inspiring. So, Alex, thank you again, man.
Thanks, young man. It was great.
Oh, so much fun. And my thank you again to Alex for coming on the show. Guys, you have to find your own unique story and find the way to tell it in the way that only you can. It's a really hard thing to do, especially when you're first starting out, but it's something that comes from practice, something that comes from, as we said, putting in those hours, putting in the time. And to quote Alex, he said, "We all have a unique story, so no matter what you do, it's going to be different. But if you spend time making sense in what makes you different and working on that only, I think that's how you take it to the next level." And I think the really important part of that quote is working on that only. I think a lot of times we're scared of the things that differentiate us from our predecessors, from the people that we look up to, the people that inspire us. And it's really hard to put those unique elements of ourselves that differ greatly from the people that we look up to, the people that have had success before us, because we think it won't work or will be scorned because of it. But like Alex is saying there, it's so important to grab onto those things and really just work them out. Work them into your work as much as you can. It seems so backwards, especially when we're scared of those things, because it's such a vulnerable thing to do, to put yourself out there in that way. But that is what is going to make you unique. That's what's going to make your work interesting, whatever it is that you do. So really try to think about what it is that makes you unique and just pull it out in the most blatant ways that you can, you know, really put yourself out there almost obsessively. That's really how you're going to find yourself as a creative person, as an artist, and as a human being as well, to really figure out what you care about. So again, thank you to Alex. If you have not checked out his photography yet, you have to. You are doing yourself a disservice. Again, if you have an Instagram account, just go right now. Alex Strohl, AlexStrohl. Breathtaking photography. It's going to make you want to get out of your house and into nature. He is ridiculously talented, and he has a little bit more to say after the episode here. So make sure you tune in after the music stops to hear about designing your own lifestyle. Really good stuff. But hopefully you were inspired to go and get your work done. So go and get it done, and we will be here for you on Thursday. If you need the push again, I love you all. Go get some amazing work done, and we will see you then. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.
I would like to add something about designing your own lifestyle, because that's always been the driving force of my life, is designing it. Ever since I was in high school, I knew I wasn't made for structures, and I've always carried this healthy disregard for authority. So when you say designing your life, what does it mean really? It sounds cool, but what is the details of it? And what is sort of the action plan? So I've sort of custom made this little values that I try to look at every day. And I think that the number one rule is to believe in you. And when you make a decision, be confident about it and don't go back. If you made that decision, it's done. And if it goes wrong, don't regret, I should have done the other thing. Just stick to your decisions and believe in you. Second, I'd say that it's important to think different. Sounds a bit Apple, but it's thinking different is, for me, it's thinking the opposite of everyone else. So sometimes I'll even play somebody's different opinion. If I agree with somebody I'm talking to, I'm going to try to play the opposite and have a conversation on that, making them believe I'm thinking the opposite, even if I'm not, just to see what comes out of it. It's a healthy exercise, I think. I like it. And third, I think I like to challenge everything. Why is this? And that sort of helps you come up with new ideas, right? If you challenge everything, it's like, why is this thing blue, for example? Try to find the reasons, and if you disagree with them, sort of make up your own solutions or explanations. And I think fourth is to decide what matters to you. So being an essentialist somehow, and decluttering your life and focusing only on what matters. And it's pretty hard to decide what matters. So you got to sit down and decide what matters to you, what's your goal, and then what matters to you, and stick to that plan. And if there's things that are secondary, just don't do them. It's not worth it. And yeah, I think lastly is to use persistence and don't lose focus, because I think we're all a bit lazy inside. To defeat this laziness, for me, it's important to develop a routine. And a routine for me helps creativity, and masters of the past use routines for something. There's actually a book about that, about the biggest painters and writers of our centuries worked, and 99% of them used a routine. So it works for them, works for me.
Yeah, those are 5 really good points. Going backwards, I think, developing like kind of a habit or routine is super important, because it makes that like a part of you. You know what I mean? As opposed to like this thing that you kind of get to whenever you get time. Just making it a part of your life. It makes it a part of you in everything you do. Yeah, that's the difference between an amateur and a professional. Is having that routine and doing something, even if you don't feel like it sometimes. You can't just be inspired every day. That's just not real. And deciding what matters too. I think a really effective way of doing that, because I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with is, and I think that has a lot to do with your voice as an artist, no matter what artist you are. If you're a photographer, if you're a writer, if you're a painter, if you're a musician, is figuring out what actually does matter to you as a human. And then kind of having the bravery to put that into your work, you know what I mean? And embrace the downsides. That's the thing, right? Because when you decide what matters, you're letting some stuff down, and there's going to be downsides, so you need to be okay with them. You can't just have it both ways. Yeah. And I think sometimes it could be more effective to decide what doesn't matter first, to weed those things out, and then just realize that life is okay whenever you don't watch that TV show, or when you don't go to the bar with that particular, friend who always wants to talk about himself or herself. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just like weaning things slowly out of your life that don't matter, and just, like you said, kind of getting to the essentials.
Yep.
And I also agree about, being confident with those decisions that you do make, and then
even if they're wrong sometimes,
Absolutely. But yeah, being brave about that, and then, being willing to kind of think opposite and challenging everything. I love it, dude.
Oh, thanks, man.